everyone. Welcome to another lesson in our series of grammar lessons. Today we are going to deal with the passive voice. Okay, so let's stay with me. So this is the outline of our lesson for today. We are going to see what is the passive voice. Then we move to basic rule, passive voice with two objects, phrasal verbs in the passive, verbs with prepositions in the passive, modals in the passive, and we are going to see some forms of the passive voice with it was thought that, or it is thought that, and he is believed to be, or he was believed to be. Then we will move to some practice. Okay, so let's get started. So let's start first with the passive voice, what is it, etc. So in English we have two voices. One is called the active and the other is the passive voice. Okay, so we have some examples. Look at I did my homework. I did my homework. This is an active voice. My homework was done. My homework was done. This is a passive voice. Good. So before we move to how did we change from the active to the passive, let's see why do we use the passive voice. We use the passive voice mainly for two things. There are other usages or other uses, but we will just stick to these two important ones. The first one, if we are not sure who did the action. Okay? We are not sure who did an action. And if we want to focus our attention on what was done, not on who did it, but on what was done. Okay? We are going to understand more when we start explaining the rules of the passive voice with some examples. So let's continue our journey. Some verbs, however, are not put into the passive. Okay? So there are some verbs in English that we can't use in the passive voice. We are going to look just at two important type of verbs. One is all intransitive verbs are not put in the passive because they don't have an object, and we know that in the passive voice the object is the most important thing when we want to speak about the passive. So look at this. I ran too fast. We don't have an object because run, you can just say I ran and stop. There is no object, so no passive voice. She went home. She went home. Also, we don't have an object because the verb go here is intransitive. It doesn't have an object. Okay? So this is the first part. Intransitive verbs are not put into the passive voice. Some state verbs also are not put into the passive voice when we describe a state. Okay? So let's look at these two examples. She is a nice person. We have the verb to be here. So she is a nice person. We are describing a state. We can't put this sentence into the passive voice. Also, he looks happy. He looks happy. Okay? We can't put it here into the passive voice. But some of these verbs, if the meaning changes, especially looks, it can be put into the passive voice. Okay? But now we are not dealing with that, so we will just move to understand the passive voice. The rule that is important, especially for beginners or for intermediate students who want to understand how to use the passive voice. So let's continue. Now let's start with the basic form of the passive voice. Okay? So we have two sentences here. We are going to look at them. Let's start with the first one. The police arrested the thief. So in this sentence, we have subject, verb, and object. The police is the subject, arrested is the verb, the thief is the object. Sentence number 2 is in the passive voice. So sentence number 1 is the active voice. Okay? But let's look at the sentence number 2, which is in the passive voice. The thief was arrested by the police. I will repeat. The thief was arrested by the police. This is the same sentence, but we changed it into the passive voice. So let's try to understand how did we change this sentence. So if you look at the first sentence, we have 3 components: subject, verb, and object. We first start with the police. Okay? Then we have arrested, then we have thief. Now, look at the second sentence. We start with the thief. The thief, what is the thief? It is the object of sentence number 1. So, we start with the object of sentence number 1. Then we have was. Was, we didn't have this verb in the first sentence. Yes, that's right. We use the verb to be because we want us to move to the passive voice. So when we want to move to the passive voice, we have in this level to use the verb to be. So, after the verb to be, we have arrested. Okay? Was arrested. Arrested here is not the simple past. No, it is the past participle of the verb. Past participle of the verb. Then we have by. We didn't have this in the first sentence, but we have it now because we are in the passive voice. After that, we have the police. What is the police? It is the subject of sentence number 1. So let's explain now. Why did we have was and not is or are, etc.? Simply, we have was arrested. We put the verb to be in the simple past, because if we go back to the first sentence, the police arrested the thief. Arrested is in the simple past. So we have to put the verb to be in the tense of sentence number 1 of the active verb. Okay? The tense of the active verb. If we have the active verb in the simple present, we have to use verb to be in the simple present. If we have the active verb in the simple past, we have to use the verb to be in the simple past. If we have the past perfect, we have to use the past perfect. So you have to be very careful with this. Just look at the active sentence. See what type of tense do we have in the main verb, the verb that we want to change to the passive. Then we change the verb to be to that tense. After that, we continue with the past participle of the verb. And here sometimes you will have a sentence with 3 verbs, 2 auxiliaries and the main verb. We want the past participle of the main verb, not the auxiliaries. Plus by, plus subject, plus subject of sentence number 1. What do we call this? We call it agent. So look at the rule. We have subject plus verb to be conjugated in the tense of the first sentence or the active sentence, plus past participle of the verb that we want to change to the passive, plus by plus agent. But remember, by plus agent, we only add it to the sentence if it is important, if it is known, and if it is necessary. You can't say, for example, by somebody, by someone, because it's already unknown, and that's why we use the passive voice. We use it because most of the time we want to concentrate on the object, not on the subject. So the agent here, if it is known, we put it. If it is not known, we don't. So let's continue. Now we have some examples to make you understand a little bit the passive voice. Look at to write a book. This is an infinitive plus an object. Why did I choose this? Because I want to show you that what is important is the verb and the object, not the subject. So we have to write. To write is in the infinitive. So we need the verb to be in the infinitive. So look, we start with the book because it's the object of the first sentence or the first fragment of a sentence, plus verb to be. To be is conjugated in the infinitive. We didn't change it. Why? Because we have to write. So we need to have to be. Plus past participle of the verb write, which is written. So to write a book becomes a book to be written. The second sentence, writing a book. Writing a book. We have a gerund. We have a verb plus ing. We don't have a continuous form. No, we have just verb plus ing. We just need verb to be plus ing. So look at the sentence. A book being written. Okay? We have a book, the object, plus verb to be, being in the tense of the first sentence. Verb plus ing. So here we have verb plus ing plus written, the past participle of the verb. Now we move to an actual sentence. She speaks French. French is spoken. We have the object French, speaks. We have it in the simple present, so we have the verb to be is. This is the simple present. And we have spoken, the past participle of the verb speaks. Okay? Khalid studies English. Studies is in the simple present. So English is studied by Khalid. English is studied by Khalid. So again, you can go back with the video to see the rule. Try to memorize it. I will just repeat it to you here. Verb, we have the subject and the verb, and the object becomes the object plus verb to be in the tense of the first sentence plus past participle of the verb plus by plus agent if we have it and if we need it, if it is necessary. Okay? Now we move to passive voice with two objects. So we have seen just one object. Sometimes we have two objects. With verbs, we call them diatransitive, but we don't need to know what we call them for right now. We just need to know that they have two objects. So look at Sarah gave a book to Ahmed. We have Sarah gave what? A book. That's a direct object. To whom? To Ahmed. That's an indirect object. So we need to have two sentences in the passive voice for here. We can have just one if we like, but we just need to know that we can have two passive voice sentences. The first one we start with a book, and the second one we start with Ahmed. So look, a book was given. Why did we say was? Because we have gave in the first sentence. Sarah gave, it's simple past. We have verb to be in the simple past. Given to Ahmed by Sarah. A book was given to Ahmed by Sarah. Ahmed was given a book by Sarah. In the exam, you can choose one of them, but if you are asked to write two, you have to write two different forms. But if you are just asked to write one, you can choose which one, unless they start the sentence with a book, for example. So you have to do a book, or if the sentence that they gave you is starting with Ahmed, you have to start with Ahmed. Okay, so this is the passive voice for verbs with two objects. Now we move to another type of verbs. They are called phrasal verbs. So we are going to see phrasal verb or phrasal verbs in the passive. So simply it's the same as other verbs. They have put off the meeting. The meeting has been put off. The meeting has been put off. Why? Because they have put This is present perfect. So we have the meeting, the object, plus has been. Has been is the past participle, is the present perfect of verb to be. Put off, this is the past participle of the verb put, because it does not change. They have to give up smoking. They have to give up smoking. So the phrasal verbs that we have here is give up. We change the sentence into smoking has to be given up. Here we have two different things. Have to, because it's a modal here, have to give up. We change it into has to be given up. Has to be, because we have to give, it's infinitive, to be in the infinitive. Has changed because in the first sentence we have, because we have they, but here we have smoking, which is a singular noun. It becomes has. Smoking has to be given up. Okay, so this is it with these verbs, with preposition, with phrasal verbs. We have another type of verbs. They are the same as phrasal verbs in that way, or in a way that they have prepositions. We will look at. So here again, it's the same as phrasal verbs. She insisted on punctuality. Punctuality was insisted on. Okay, we have insisted on. We change it to insisted on. It's the same because we have insisted here is regular verb with ed. But before that we have was. Punctuality was insisted on. Okay, look at the second part. We depend on the internet for all our communications. We depend on the internet for all our communications. The internet is depended on for all our communications. Depend here is the simple present, so we have verb to be is plus depended, which is regular verb with ed, on for all our communications. So here is again verbs with prepositions. It's the same as phrasal verb, the same as other verbs. You just need to take care of the same rule we have studied earlier. Okay, now let's continue to the other part. Now we will see modals in the passive voice. So I must do my job now. I must do my job now. We have must plus infinitive do. So we need to have must plus infinitive be. My job must be done. And we have the adverb of time now. My job must be done now. I must do my job now. We change it into my job must be done now. She should have written the email yesterday. She should have written the email yesterday. We have here what we call perfect infinitive, have written. Okay, and the sentence is in the past, so it means modals in the past. The email, that's the object. The email should have been. We have should have written. So written is the verb. It is in the past participle. We need to add should have plus been in the past participle plus past participle of the verb write, which is written. The email should have been written. Okay? Did you get it? I know it's a little bit difficult, but just think about she should have written. Where is the verb? The main verb is written. How many verbs before it? We have should, the modal, and have the auxiliary. So when we have the modal and the auxiliary, we don't change them. Should have. What do we change? We add verb to be in the tense of the first sentence. What is the tense that we have written? It is past participle. So we need to have the verb to be in the past participle. Should have been. After that, we add the past participle of the main verb, which is written. And we add yesterday. I will repeat this, the sentence. The email should have been written yesterday. Good. So that's it with modals. Now we have some verbs of thinking or believing and saying. With these verbs, or verbs of thinking, saying, believing, etc., especially in a that clause, we are going to see what you mean by a that clause. These type of verbs, they have two forms of the passive voice. Okay? Two forms of the passive voice. The first, it can be, it is thought that, or it was thought that. We can say it is believed that, it was believed that. It is said that, it was said that. Okay? So look at this type of sentence. People believe that. So it is a that clause. We have that. People believe, this is a noun phrase, people believe that the world suffers from many troubles because of our bad behavior. People believe that the world suffers from many troubles because of our bad behavior. Simply, we have believe in the simple present. We change this sentence into it is believed. I know there is no sense in that for you to understand, but this is how we change it. In English, you can say it is believed that, and we write the sentence as it is because there is nothing to change in the sentence. The world suffers from many troubles because of our bad behavior. Okay? For here, don't change anything. Just write them as they are. We have people believe, it becomes it is believed. If you have people say, it becomes it is said. If you have people think, it becomes it is thought. And we add that and we continue our sentence. This is the first part. The second part, it is thought that, or it was thought that. So here we have the past. In the first sentence we studied just right now, we had the simple present. People believed. Now we have the past. People believed that the world suffers from many troubles because of our bad behavior. It was believed that the world suffers from many troubles because of our bad behavior. Okay? People believed, it was believed. People believe, it is believed. But now we have people believed, so it was believed. Okay? Good. This is the first type. Okay? The second type, we call it he is believed to be. So let's take these examples again. People think that Jane is an engineer. We can say it is thought, like we did in the previous example. It is thought that Jane is an engineer. Jane is thought to be an engineer. So how did we do that? We take the subject after that, Jane. Okay? We take the subject after that, which is Jane. We add verb to be that goes with think. Think is in the simple present, so verb to be. In the simple present we have is plus past participle of thought, past participle of think, which is thought, plus infinitive. Infinitive what? Of the main verb that comes after the subject of that. The subject after that. So we have Jane is an engineer. What is the verb? Jane is. Okay? Jane is. If we have Jane speaks, we are going to have to speak. If we have Jane writes, we are going to have to write. If we have Jane does, we are going to have to do, etc. Jane is thought to be an engineer. Then we move to the second example. It's in the past. People thought. So in the first, people think, but now people thought. People thought that Jane was an engineer. Jane was thought to be an engineer. We do the same process, but we change the verb to be because here people thought is in the past. In the first sentence, we have people think, but here we have people thought. So we have was. And remember, we have the infinitive because the tense in the first part is the same as the tense in the second part. Also, if we have the future in the simple in the second part, there is no problem. We just use the infinitive. Okay, but if the tense is different, we are going to see that in a few moments. So here is the second part of verbs of thinking, saying, and believing with that, that clause. Now we will move to another thing. If the verb in the noun phrase has a tense anterior to the time of the verb in the main clause, we use the perfect infinitive. So people think. So let's look here. They think James was a fool. Think is the simple present. James was a fool, that's before. That's past. We can't say James is thought and we say to be a fool. Why? Because James is, that's the simple present. And if we say to be, that's also going to be the simple present or the present. But look at the above. They think James was a fool. We have a tense that happened before think. Even if we have we can have was, we can have the past perfect, the past continuous, etc. We need to have James is thought to have been a fool. Okay? So these are some general ideas about the passive voice. Now we are going to move to other things. Please, if there are certain things that you haven't understood, you can write them down at the comment section. Now we are going to move to some practice. This is how the exam is going to be. Rewrite the following sentences beginning with the words given. So we have certain sentences and we have beginning with the words given. You are going to finish what the sentence needs after those words. Look at, they will write the book by the end of July. We have the book. A passing car hit him, but he feels fine now. A passing car hit him, but he feels fine now. We have to start with he. They lost the match with a heavy score. The match. Pause the video for a few minutes, do the exercise, and then we will come back to see the correction. Okay? So let's pause the video now. Now we are going to move to see the correction. Good. So look, they will write the book by the end of July. The book will be written by the end of July. Will write becomes will be written by the end of July. Remember, by the end of July here, it's time. It's referring to the future. It's not like by plus agent, by James, by Ahmed, etc. A passing car hit him, but he feels fine now. He was hit by a car, by a passing car. He was hit by a passing car, but he feels fine. But he feels fine, we didn't change it because feels here is a linking verb. We call it a linking verb or a verb of state. Okay? They lost the match with the heavy score. They lost the match with the heavy score. The match was lost with the heavy score. They lost, this is the simple past. They lost the match. We need to have the verb to be in the simple past. So the match was lost with the heavy score. And this is our sentence. Now we move to another exercise, practice 2. Rewrite the following sentences as suggested. Again, I changed the formula because you may also have this in the exam. Sarah sent a letter to Amina. So here you need to write 2 sentences, a letter and Amina. People said that the doctors need a raise in their salary. You need to start with it and you need to start with doctors. So again, pause the video for 5 minutes or 6 minutes, do the exercise and come back to see the correction. Now I will move to the correction. So for you, pause the video. Don't follow with me. Sarah sent a letter to Amina. A letter was sent to Amina by Sarah. Amina was sent a letter by Sarah. Again, this is what we did. We have sent in the simple past, so we need to have the verb to be was plus past participle of the verb. Now we move to the second part. People said that the doctors need a rise in their salary. So people say that the doctors need a rise in their salary. It was said that the doctors need a rise in their salary. It was said because we have said, people said. You remember? Said, we need was said. Doctors were said to need. Why? Because we have need. So we need to have the infinitive to need a raise in their salary. Okay? So here are some exercises of the passive voice. If you still have some questions or things you didn't understand, please write them at the comment section and I will be very happy to answer and clarify things that you didn't understand. Again, if you like our video, please subscribe, like and share with your friends to get more and to encourage us to give more. If you have again any questions, please ask them at the comment section below, and see you in another video with another lesson.